You're very welcome to episode 6 of the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as always by the usual duo of Matt Toombs and Donn McClean. It feels like ages since we've had a podcast, Matt. Take it away for your Christmas. Give the listeners and viewers a little bit of insight. What does Matt Toombs get up to? What does his Christmas week look with all this racing over that week after Christmas Day?
Oh, I try and get all the family stuff done in the run up to Christmas. It's a bit harder this year with Ascot so close to it. And then I go to Kempton on Boxing Day or Stephen's Day where you are. And then it's nose to the grindstone pretty much from there. So much good racing. Fantastic time of year to be enjoying it all.
Yeah, Don, what was your work schedule like? Did you get a chance to switch off? And say, Don, if you do have a day off at Christmas, I presume you're still sitting at home watching the Christmas racing. So maybe you want to be working the whole time. I don't know. To give us
I kind of do it the opposite way around. If I can, I try to spend Stephen's Day at home and always have done that when I can. It's not always possible when I can. And generally, my dad and my brother come around to watch racing here along with their brothers and wives and families. So it's a kind of a family day, but the sitting room door is closed for about 4 hours while racing is on. And then 27, 28, 29 to Leopardstown. And yeah, like Matt, going through, like trying to keep an eye on everything, which is not easy given the plethora of racing that there is. But it's, I don't know, maybe it's the same every year, but this year it just seemed to be deep quality racing. Like it was just top-notch racing the whole way through.
Yeah, and being at Leopardstown on track, it just felt like you'd have a race done, you'd look at the screen and there was the King George's on all of a sudden. You're like, oh yeah, sorry, this is the most anticipated race outside of Cheltenham. I better watch this. So no, really good racing throughout. And Matt and Don are going to mark your cards here. We're going to split our Christmas review into 2 parts here. First, this week, we're going to focus mainly on the novices, and next week sort of open company races as best we can, sort of using that split. But a lot of good stuff, so have your notebooks at the ready. Before we get going, if you are listening on the podcast, do hit that 5-star review and leave a review if possible wherever you're listening. And on YouTube, do hit that like button and subscribe completely for free. It's a chance to get the best way to keep up to date with all the Cheltenham content, not just this show, but throughout as we get closer to the festival. Really looking forward to it, and a lot of big stuff on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, where of course you can get highly competitive exchange markets daily, and we have started pricing Ante-Post for the Cheltenham Festival. More of that as we get on with the show. So let's get straight into our review. And Matt, we'll start with you with a trend, and then you can take it away with your thoughts on the race. We'll start with the Neville Hotel. So give us the trend and your thoughts on the race, and we'll get going and hit this as quick as we can.
The trend is that runners at the festival are 11 from 53 this century, 76 point, 143% profit, become a really strong race. 10 of those winners scoring at the festival from 2010 onwards. This does tend to be the test of stamina, you'd imagine. 9 of those winners have been in the Broadway, 4 from 24, 33% profit, and the National Hunt Chase, 5 from 19, 203% profit. The Staying Novice Chase division has looked strong this season, especially in Ireland. We'll debate the strength of this form, but it wouldn't surprise me if the race was again a good guide at the festival. I have to put my hand up here. I put Grange Clare West up in the jumpers to follow, so possibly an element of confirmation bias here, but I was really impressed by this. And of all the good novices I've seen this season, he's the best jumper in terms of his jumping being suitable for a staying chase. Blood Destiny accelerates into his fences, jumps brilliantly like a 2-miler. Ile Francais was spectacular in a test of speed at 3 miles. But for efficiency and rhythm for a future Gold Cup horse, Grange Clare West has already got a really good technique, best mate style. But he was a bit keen here, maybe on a sound surface, the quicker tempo of a 3-mile chase to help him settle better. Though he won easy, I'm not sure how much Paul at Townend was holding on to. Have a small concern about how he'd take the hullabaloo of the festival. He won at the Punchestown Festival on yielding ground. By presenting out of a Sir Harry Lewis mare, produced other progeny who've shown their best form on good ground. So you'd be optimistic he'll go on it, for all he's a big unit. He does look the right favourite for the Broadway. And normally I'd be getting stuck into it at around 5.0 after a performance like that in this race. But it does look an unusually deep division this year. So he may not shorten. I'm holding fire. For those who follow trainer trends, Willie Mullins typically brings his Staying Novice chasers along slowly, running them over shorter in the first half of the season. They often bypass this race. But his previous 4 winners of it, Don Poley and Monkfish, followed up in the Broadway. Back in Focus and Gaillard de Menil followed up in the National Hunt Chase. The beaten horses, Favori de Champdou look to need to go right-handed, so forgive him this. Flooring Porter, 16 lengths third, flanking manoeuvre, looked decent yardsticks, be it Flooring Porter was on the inside on the worst of the ground. 6th length runner-up, Corbett's Cross, doesn't look a fluent jumper of fences. It's a testament to his raw ability. He finished clear of the others. The first two did come wide in the straight, which looked to be the best place on the ground, especially on the final day. My gut instinct is to see whether Corbett's Cross is put in the stayers hurdle later today. Given connections, you wonder if his fencing will suddenly improve if he goes into handicap company in the spring. But I'm in the camp that was really impressed with the winner here.
Okay, yeah, Don, it's an interesting point Matt raised is about horses jumping technique. I always remember getting carried away with Lost in Translations jumping at Carlisle and backing him for the Betfair and the King George and the Gold Cup and everything else that followed this year, and realizing very quickly that that explosive jumping isn't suited to 3 miles. So with that in mind, does Grainclair West's jumping technique really suit this trip, heading and looking ahead to the Broadway or the RSA?
Yeah, like it. Matt says you need to be conserving energy over longer trips. Of course, the 2 mile division, it's the sprint distance of national hunt racing, so you want to be, and it's why the top 2 mile chasers, some of them anyway, live on the edge. Like Moscow Flyer, famously, he fell I think it was every third race or every fourth race he fell or unseated, and if he didn't fall or unseated, he won. But that was him living on the edge and being fast and fluent and quick and leaving very little margin for error at his fences. Whereas over longer trips, you just need to be more conservative and conserving more energy. The thing that impressed me about Grainclair West was that he put back-to-back runs together. Before this, I think he was 5 for 5 after a break of 80 days or more, and he was beaten on the 2 occasions on which he ran relatively quickly back after a run. So he did it really well. As Matt says, he was wide throughout, and Corbett's Cross was wide in the latter part of the race, as in when they jumped the second last and came around the home turn, but he wasn't towards the inside the whole way. So I like Corbett's Cross. I think, interesting point that Matt makes about the stairs hurdle, but I think there's plenty of room for improvement in his jumping, and if he can improve his jumping over fences, and I'm not certain that he's an out-and-out stayer either. Like in the Albert Bartlett hurdle last season, I'm not sure that he would have won, especially given that we know how much stamina Stay Away Faye has, the winner of that race, when Corbett's Cross ran out at the last. I thought he was coming to get Stay Away Faye, but on the approach to the final flight, he just wasn't really getting him. So I'm not certain. We'll never know. I'm not certain how strongly he would have come up the hill. I think maybe at intermediate trips like 2 miles 4, that beginner's chase that he won was 2 miles 5.5. That type of trip, if he can just introduce a wee bit more fluency into his jumping, which there's plenty of time for that. He's a very inexperienced chaser. He could take a good step forward. Flooring Porter, like he was around the inside. You can't go anywhere else on a left-handed track with Flooring Porter. He has to go around the inside. And I thought he did well. And I know Gavin Cromwell's talking about maybe going back over hurdles. So that's an option. I'm sure he'll have an entry in the stairs hurdle, and we'll see where he'll go after that. But he was, he was so good at Cheltenham in the early part of the season on his chasing debut. He's obviously a dual stairs hurdle winner. So I know he's 9 now, but I wouldn't be giving up on Flooring Porter yet. But of course, Grainclair West is very exciting, but I think there could be a bit more to come from Corbett's Cross as well.
Okay, maybe we want to keep an eye on even the stairs hurdle, as Matt touched on. We'll go to the Cater Star Novices Chase. Matt, we'll keep it brief enough just because this horse is more than likely not going to be going to Cheltenham, but it was just a phenomenal performance again. I was sitting in Leopardstown watching this on the big screen, and we were all taken aback by this jumping performance from the front. It was absolutely sensational, and look, could be next year's or this year's King George winner. Who knows?
Yeah, normally the trend we use here is that all 23 Quarto Star winners to run the Broadway have been beaten. But as you say, he's not going to run. Perhaps of more relevance then is that horses beaten in the Quarto Star, 5 from 28 in the Broadway this century, 19.68% profit. This goes back to the same point as horses that run poorly in the King George have a good record in the Gold Cup, and especially the Ryanair. A top-class 3 mile chase around Kempton on a sound surface tends to produce a fast, unrelenting gallop. That's very different to the tempo of the undulations of Cheltenham, especially in the Broadway and the Old Course. Plenty of staying novices don't take to this Kempton test. So I wouldn't dismiss Hermes Allen as being a grade 1 novice in the spring on the strength of being beaten here.
Okay, yeah, Don, look, quick word on Ile Francais. It is refreshing, I thought. I know it's French racing, so it's not obviously not Britain or Ireland, but to have a horse to just do things differently, it's a bit like with Emma Mullins last season. It's refreshing to see, and this horse is, as everyone can see from that performance, is a very, very exciting prospect. Yeah,
look, he was phenomenal, really, Daniel. He just got out front under James Reilly, got into his rhythm, and I think Matt has some stats on the time of the race, but the time was faster than the King George, and it wasn't because they went too fast in the King George. And the sectionals tell you that he was just faster throughout consistently. Again, Hermes Allen, he could have bumped into a really, really good, well, he did bump into a really, really good horse here, and he's a Shallow Hurdle winner from last season. He stuck with Ile Francais. I know Kilbeg King, he's a decent horse as well, and he was taking a nice step forward. He won a big handicap hurdle at the Punchestown Festival last season, and his first run he was pretty well beaten, but his last 2 runs he took a step forward, and then he obviously took another step forward on Stephen's Day. So I thought he did well because he was well back early on. Then he closed up in Hermes Hélène, but I think Hermes Hélène, you can probably mark him up a little bit on it because he did try to match Ile Francais in the early part of the race, and we probably know already, and time may show even more so, that that was a fairly formidable task that he hadn't tried to match him. So I thought last season, to me, he struck me as a stamina horse, which is why when he went back for the Ballymore and he was well backed, I was against him, and it's easy to be against Shallow Hurdle winners in a Ballymore. But yeah, I think Hermes Hélène, again, he's another novice from whom there could be a wee bit more to come, and as much again over intermediate trips as over staying trips. And Kilbeg King, I can see him maybe going back into a handicap.
Yeah, fascinating there, and particularly on Ile Francais, but do not rule out Hermes Hélène improving in the spring. We'll go to the Faheen Novices Chase. We'll try and stay away from the controversy as best we can, just because it's been done to death. But it's so funny to talk about, and it's stealing the headline from Galopin des Champs. Probably record-breaking performance at Leopardstown. It's just hilarious. But Matt, give us the trend, and I'll bring Donn in first on this race.
The trend is that runners are 2 from 8 in the Turners, but 0 from 10 in the Broadway. Only once in the last 15 seasons has the word heavy not been in the official going description. It's often bottomless here. The novices who want a sound surface often go to Leopardstown. And historically, that's made the Faheen form of less relevance at Cheltenham. But with slow ground at the festival now, may prove a better guide. Overall this century, runners are 4 from 36 at the festival, 38% loss. Okay,
Donn, it was a where were you moment, I guess. I'm trying to stay away from controversy as best I can, but where were you? Were you working on this when this happened on the...
I was at Leopardstown watching it, yeah.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, it quickly became apparent that it was going to be a significant moment. But look, that's racing. It's the way it went, and yeah, like that's what garnered the headlines. Whereas Gaelic Warrior's performance was really the point of the race, and like he was 15 seconds faster than the later race, the Tim Duggan chase over the same course and distance, which like that's a really good handicap chase, and he just blew it out of the water. And Ile Téton was a good novice hurdler last season. I thought he settled a lot better on his chasing debut at Thurles and won well that day than he had been over hurdles, and he settled well as well, obviously behind the pace that Gaelic Warrior was setting. So he could be maybe a wee bit under the radar, given that he only finished second. With Gaelic Warrior, look, he's a formidable presence. I do worry about him going left-handed though. Like he's soft ground, 2.5 miles right-handed. Everything perfect. Stray away from that. Look, he's a classy horse, and he's finished second in his 2 runs at Cheltenham, but he's been beaten in his 2 runs at Cheltenham, including in the Fred Winter Hurdle. I think it was a mark in the 120s, 129, I think it was his mark. Yeah. And he was way out to his right then. Okay, he was beaten by a very good horse in the Ballymore last season, but going at Cheltenham, it's not going to play to his strengths, and it's a case of like he's a very short price now for the Turners. It's a case of will he have enough in hand over his rivals to allow for the fact that it's not going to be his ideal track. And yeah, I'd be inclined to take him on at a very short price.
Okay, would you be in similar agreement, Matt? I guess like a normal horse that jumps straight, he just needs to be a quarter of a length or a short head better than his rivals. Does Gaelic Warrior then in a Turner's over 2.5 maybe need to be 3, 4, 5 lengths potentially better than the second in the end of it just to beat him? Or
quite possibly more than that. I 100% agree with what Donn said. If this was a right-handed track at Cheltenham, he'd be the banker novice bet of the meeting. So what's he going to do in the interim? There's the 2 mile and 5 race at the Dublin Racing Festival. That's where I'd take him. Leopardstown, you're jumping more in straight lines, so it's less severe than Cheltenham. You then get a bit of an idea of what he could do on a left-handed track over fences. If that didn't work, it's worth noting that Easter's early this year, 31st of March. The 2 mile 4 grade 1 at Fairyhouse is only 17 days after the Turners. So it's probably one or the other. And the one thing sensible that Patrick Mullins did say after the race was Cheltenham doesn't really suit him. So I'd be definitely looking to take him on at about 2.38. Ile Téton was in the wrong race. He's looks to me a 2 miler who wants a sound surface. I guess Willie wanted to split him and Charger up, have 2 in each race. Sharjah, also one of those conditions, the same ownership as Gaelic Warrior, which Richie says that's the tax you pay for being at Clesutton. So I give him a bit of a pass for this, and it'd be interesting to see him back at 2 mile 1 in the Irish Arkle. An American Mike was disappointing. He looked back on track when easily beating Factor File on his chasing debut. Although that was on soft heavy, perhaps he didn't handle Limerick heavy. He's best judged after another run.
Yeah, I learned down through the years there's different kinds of heavy depending on the track, of course. We will go to the Racing Post Novice Chase and let you kick this one off, Matt. So tell us your trend and your thoughts on the race. Disappointing for Facile Vega, not too dissimilar to his Dublin Racing performance, well, not this time last year, but last year, I guess. And there's disappointment, but there's still an expectation that perhaps at Cheltenham we can maybe see the best of him. But who knows? I just think he's so well regarded in that Willie Mullins stable for sure.
Yeah, he is. I think it's the ground, which we'll come on to, that's the key to him. The trend is this race is run over 2 mile 1 furlong, sometimes a little further. So sits between the Arkle and the Turners distance-wise. Standard 2-1, 241 yards further than the Arkle, 608 yards shorter than the Turners. Badged as being in the Arkle division, the Irish Arkle is run over course and distance next month. But with novices often stepping up in trip as the season progresses, it's really a trial for both. And from a punting perspective, it's been a better trial for the Turners. So winners are 4 from 15 in the Arkle, only small profits backing them. But runners are 3 from 9 in the Turners, 20.217% profit. The Arkle being a specialist race, it's unusual for the form from the graded novice chases to get turned round. Other than when tipping up, 16 of the 23 Arkle winners this century unbeaten over fences. All 27 horses beaten in this that ran in the Arkle were beaten again. So obviously negative for Facile Vega. The 3 Turners winners finished 2-4-2 here. I suspect it's going to be more of a Turners than Arkle trial again. And it was run on the sound surface, officially yielding, very much like the Dublin Racing Festival last year. And I just think Facile Vega is increasingly ground dependent. That's why he flopped. Jumping was adequate again. Doesn't really look like a 2-miler jumping. But the problem for him is he's got a better chance of getting the testing ground he wants in the Arkle than the Turners. So it's a bit between the devil and the deep blue sea. Wouldn't be a total surprise if he pitched up in the Broadway. It'd be interesting to see whether he runs over 2-1 or 2-5 at the Dublin Racing Festival. If he gets his ground, then he's still a contender for Cheltenham, but to my mind, only if he gets it. Found a 50, really talented, but he is quirky. This drop back in trip didn't look likely to suit him. I thought he'd go for the Killiney, but Gordon spotted a weak grade 1 here, took advantage. Found a 50 wasn't straightforward, threatened to duck out on the turn away from the stands, jumped out to his right, but he did warm up as the race went on, and when they went steadily, and when they were really racing over the last 3, he was straighter, which is a good sign. Given he looks to want further, it was telling how easily he sprinted away from these off a steady gallop. Gordon said afterwards he has a massive engine. He jumps to the right as well, so you'd think that the Turners on the new course would be his race rather than the Arkle. Gordon generally aims his best novice at the Turners. Quite what he'll do on the day, and it's anyone's guess. Could be interesting watching Founder 50 and Gaelic Warrior both trying to get inside of each other. But if he puts his best foot forward, then he's got every chance. The same principles of the Fairy House race 17 days after the Turners apply to him as well. It'd be a white knuckle ride if you back him, but I wouldn't want to be laying 13.0 for the Turners given his engine. If he goes the right way, he could be a top-class horse.
This jumping right-handed reminds me of Stern Forlange in the Supreme and how I convinced myself that it won't be that as bad at Cheltenham. And early on, I said, made a massive, massive mistake here. I could just have the last 3 months back of everything I've ever said. But Don, take it away on the winner, Founder 50, and some interesting takes there, Matt, on all these horses, really. But
yeah, it accentuates it, doesn't it? Like Cheltenham, it's not a, you see it from the stands or from the camera, and you think, oh, what a really gorgeous galloping track. You walk it, and I can imagine if you ride it, you're always turning. It's always turning, and you're turning surprisingly to your left. So if you're going right, you're just giving away ground at every juncture, and it's a significant negative, more so.
And just on that back straight and Leopardstown, it's pretty much straight, isn't it, for those
exactly?
Three? So that's where I convinced myself. Yeah.
It's not dead. It's not at the top of the back straight. Actually, it turns quite a bit from the left. If you look at the head-on shot that you get from the kind of path, the path that crosses the track down the back straight, and look back. Like, for example, the Champion Stakes start, the Irish Champion Stakes start, it's a fair way around the bend. Like, you give away ground by being drawn wide in a Champion Stakes. So, but that said, like Paul Carberry used to talk about the 6 fences down Leopardstown's back straight. He used to love lining up at the top of the back straight and seeing them all in a line. And yeah, and on that point, if you jump into the right, it's not as big a it's not a positive, but it's not as big a negative. Obviously, it's like Cheltenham, you jump a fence, you turn left. You jump a fence, you turn left. If you jump into the right, you're giving away all that ground. I thought this was a strange race. Like there wasn't a real rhythm to it. Like Facile Vega was behind, and then he was inside, or he was outside Founder 50. Founder 50 was jumping to his right. Patrick Mullins took him to the inside. Then he went on, which I thought was the right thing to do at the time. He took it up. Then Founder 50 took it back off him before they got to the end of the back straight, and then he floundered. And it wasn't a satisfactory race to my mind. It was 5 seconds slower as well than the Folks Sierra was in the handicap chase later on. And the Folks Sierra is a good horse, but these are Grade 1 horses, so they shouldn't have been 5 seconds slower. So to me, it's just a race that I'm putting a line through. It was interesting that I think Willie Mullins was saying afterwards maybe about stepping Facile Vega up in trip to the turners, or to 2.5 miles. And yeah, as Matt was saying, that might make sense. It means that then the Willie Mullins horses might get juggled. Like, does he join Gaelic Warrior and then turners, or does that give Gaelic Warrior a pass to go to Ferryhouse instead? And then, well, Indiana Dream is out for the season, which is a shame. And then, you know, the Blood Destiny, where does he go then? Does he drop down and trip for an Arkle? So it's all, you know, all those Willie Mullins horses, they're interdependent, aren't they? The targets, where one goes, then it's going to have an impact on where the other would go. But I wouldn't give up on Facile Vega, but as Matt was saying, the ground is probably key to him. My mate Mozzie, I thought was interesting. He kept out, on Founder 50, like he finished second in the Drinmore. So I wouldn't at all be surprised to see him stepping out and trip, and he looked like a horse who wanted every yard of this 2 miles and a furlong trip. So I think 2.5 miles might be the trip for him. And my mate Mozzie, maybe the Grand Annual might be a race for him. Like Gavin Cromwell is very adept at handicaps. He's a good horse. He's got a hurdles rating in the 140s, a similar rating over fences. That would make him interesting to me in the Grand Annual. He's got Cheltenham form as well.
Okay, yeah, maybe a race where you might see those 3 or 4 horses featuring at the Cheltenham Festival at the top end of some of those markets. We'll move on to Doran's Pride, Matt, and this is a good trial for the Albert Bartlett, and Lachlan is the winner for Willie Mullins here.
Yeah, it's the best Irish trial for the Albert Bartlett. Runners are 4 from 22, 155% profit, despite the fact generally run on very different ground. It's usually a strong contest, provides a fair test. Since it became a graded race in 2003, 19 of the 21 winners have gone 6.0 or shorter. 9 of the last 16 favourites have won. This looked well up to scratch despite the sedentary pace. Form looks worth following. And I thought the winner was good. Lachlan beat Firefox in a bumper, ran a fairway race to be one pace, 12.5 lengths ninth in the champion bumper in the manner of a stayer. He looked to have learnt a fair bit about jumping from his maiden hurdle win. Hurdle much better here till getting into the bottom of the last when he was in control. The 1 length margin of victory didn't do justice to his superiority because it was a steadily run race. He was keen. You think he'd improved for a more strongly run race, albeit the flip side is that he'd have to prove his stamina. And I think the others in behind are interesting too. Stella Story beaten Il Atlantique in a bumper. Slightly disappointing, a beaten favourite in the Novice hurdle. You ran another sound race here, having contested 2 steadily run Grade 2s. Might be the type that'll improve for a stronger run race. He's had 3 hurdled runs now. Wonder if Gordon will look to get a 4th in him and aim it at the Martin Pipe. Answer to Cafe gone off 26.0 when beating subsequent for auction winner What's Up Darling at Limerick. Given he was up against the Mullins, Elliott and de Bromhead battalions, noticeably only went off 5.0, kept galloping. Coming from Terence O'Brien's small yard, he's the type to be underestimated. O'Brien's had about 90 winners of Irish jumps races. It's telling 9 of them have been in graded handicaps. He's one of those trainers with a small string, showing what he can do when they get a good horse. Answer Cafe's had the 4 runs needed to qualify for handicap, so he's another that might show up in the Martin Pipe. And so despite the steady tempo, this could prove good form.
Okay, yeah, Don, what's your thoughts on that with the last thing Matt said there, that this could potentially turn into a decent race, some good horses in it?
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with Terence O'Brien as well. He's as Matt's saying, Terence O'Brien is a very astute trainer from Cork. He does really well. He's had some big winners down through the years as well. And answer to Cafe, like he sprang that shock in the maiden hurdle in October. He's got a rating of 128, which I thought the race wasn't really run to suit many of them. They're stamina horses. Maybe it was run to suit Answer to Cafe more than most, but like, stellar story. To me, he's all stamina. Like, he was stepping up and tripping when he got beaten in the novice hurdle over 2.5 miles. He was done for pace that day. The step up and trip looked to suit him, and he stayed on off what was a sedate pace. Search for Glory. He won the 3 mile grade 3 race at Cork on Hilly Way Chase weekend, on Hilly Way Chase day. So he wouldn't have been suited by the sedate pace either, and neither would Loughlin. He's all stamina as well. I thought he did well because is like, when he won on his hurdling bow at Punchestown, I think Paul Townend said afterwards that he didn't jump any 2 hurdles the same, so his hurdling technique was kind of a little bit hit and miss, but he was much better in the Doran's Pride, and he settled a wee bit better as well. And I thought he won with a fair bit more in hand than the 1 length winning margin. I think he could improve again, because it just looks like the penny's dropping with him gradually. So yeah, to me, the horse to take out of the race is Loughlin. The winner, I think the 2 Jigginstown horses, the Gordon Elliott horses, will both improve for a sterner stamina test. And Answer to Cave, maybe he could still be a well handicapped horse.
Okay, couple to take of that race potentially. We will go to the Shallow Hurdle. Matt, bring your trend in, which makes me smile just because of the trend itself, and then we'll bring Don in and get his take on Captain T.
So the trend is that Shallow Hurdle winners are 0 from 21 in the Ballymore. It's not that the Shallow's been a weak race. The Festival of the Century runners are 6 from 75, 44.59% profit. Is that it tends to be a real test of stamina at the trip on ground much softer than in the Ballymore, whereas, as we know, they tend to go steadily and speeds at a premium in the Ballymore itself. The Shallow tends to be more of an Albert Bartlett trial. Wichita Lyman did the double. Rickenstorm won at 34.0 after being 3rd in the Shallow.
Okay, yeah, Don, Captain T got back to winning ways.
He did, yeah. No, as Matt was saying, it's a total stamina race. Like, Time Hill won it, Champ won it, Brave Man's Game won it. It's a race from which, and Hermes Allen last year, to me, he lacked pace in the Ballymore. So, yeah, it was good to see Captain Teague back. He's a horse who only seems to do as much as he needs to do. He looked the most likely winner from a long way out, and then didn't find as much as it looked like he would when Harry Cobden went for him. But I thought he was only doing as much as he needed to do. Like, it was a really interesting race going into it. Wilmant, obviously big talking horse. He was sent off at a relatively short price. Johnny who was really impressed with winning at Carlisle on his novice hurdle. I thought he did well, because he kept on better than it looked like he was going to keep on. And Look Away as well, Neil King's horse. Like, he finished 2nd in the Greatwood Hurdle. He's got a rating of 136. It's still left from 4 pounds short of Captain Teague, and that was obviously borne out in the result of the race or how it was run. But I still think there could be more to come from him. But Captain Teague, we mentioned, I remember you asked me for my list of Albert Bartlett hurdles, and I had a list of about 19 horses, but he was one of them. I still retain that. I still think, he's a horse that I think he had more in hand in the winning margin, and again, a step out and trip again to a longer distance where there's more of a premium and stamina, that could see him step forward again.
Okay, a couple for the Albert Bartlett in the last couple of races. Matt, your take on the race?
Yeah, I'd echo that, and particularly Captain T. Paul Nicholls made it pretty clear that this is all about chasing next season. So I think he'd be one of those that wouldn't be hard trained to win a novice hurdle at the festival. Look Away, just gone up a pound to 137. There's much more of an emphasis on stamina here. Something like the Coral Cup could suit him. Jukebox Man, who was 4 from 5 coming here, been only beaten in a bumper by the unbeaten Gidley Park. He won 2 small hurdles, coped well with a big step up in class despite hanging left a bit, only beaten 1 length and 3/4. He's going to be freshened up for the spring, though Ben Pauling wasn't committing to Cheltenham specifically. He's one for the tracker. And Johnny Who, he was keen here and got outpaced, as Don said. I thought he was going to be beaten a long way, but he was only 2 lengths down at the end. He's a half-brother to London National winner Doing Fine. And he looks the right type for the Albert Bartlett. If he gets a stronger gallop, he may well settle better. He's about 21.0 for that at the moment, but he's the sort who might be a bigger price on the day. Again, it's one of those races that the beaten horses shouldn't be discounted here.
Okay, we'll move on to a couple of exciting beginner chases. And look, I don't know if Matt has trends on a horse being 275 before jumping a fence to win the Arkle, which is surely a terrible price. And then he wins and you go, geez, it's not just a gift for us. But Marine Nationale, Don, to the tune of Feliz Navidad, was rung out at Leopardstown. And leaving all that aside, joking aside, it is great to have a proper superstar, and we're all watching it, and he just delivers the quote-unquote perfect performance, I would say.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? Like, he's all you would have hoped for and all you would have expected from him before his beginner's chase. You got all of that. You couldn't have hoped for more. Like, Barry Connell he was very nervous beforehand, but like, all he said about his schooling, he said his schooling over fences couldn't have gone any better, that he could be even better over fences than he was over hurdles. And you kind of went, it's a high bar, but Jesus, he was so good. Like, and he was faster than Dyna Blue as well. He was about 3 seconds faster than Dyna Blue was, and they didn't hang around there. Gentleman de May set a good pace, and Marine Nationale looked like he could have gone a fair bit faster. Like Michael O'Sullivan, he's so easy on him, isn't he? He just allows him to settle into his rhythm. His jumping was so accurate for a debutant to jump as well as he did, straight and efficient, and like energy saving. When he was long, he was able to go long. When he was short, he was fast over his fences. Like, he really has it all. Like, he's just such an exciting horse. He just, please God, everything remains well with him, because this fella could do anything.
Yeah, Matt, I just have props to Barry Connell. He's done it differently. He's brought Marine Nationale on very slowly, 7 years old already, and it just seems the world is oyster. There's maybe something in that down the line for other trainers to perhaps copy.
Yeah, he just jumped so well for a first timer, didn't he? Thoroughly likeable and uncomplicated. Looks a strong favourite for the Arkle. Wouldn't be worried at all about the lack of experience if he goes there. Just 2 chase starts. Well, Chief and Western Warhorse won it off 1. The Arkle's about raw talent and the ability to jump at speed. He's got lots of it. So can you try and pick holes in him? Not easy. I did think it was a weak crop of 2-mile novice hurdlers he was beating last season. 3 of the 4 who chased him home the Supreme run over fences. Facile Vega and Ilete Tom, well beaten in Grade 1s over Christmas. Former having beaten in the pocket previously. The form of the swim, it's not like Out Hill beaten Min and Bouvardere and so on. So the bare form here is that he beat Firm Footings 8.5 lengths. Firm Footings began his season at Sligo in October, then 5th of 135, before being edged out by Spillane's Tower and chasing debut at Punchestown. Spillane's Tower been beaten 20 lengths by Facile Vega. So if a horse making their debut in these islands had done what Marine Nationale had done to Firm Footings, we wouldn't be rating them that highly. The bare form's just decent. But the point is, we know from his Supreme win that Marine Nationale is a really good horse. But he has still got to go and do it in a good race over fences. He apparently had a wind up over the summer, so little question mark about his breathing when he comes off the bridle. Some will have him as a certainty barring accidents from the Arkle. For me, the most interesting novice chase at that sort of trip all season is going to be the Irish Arkle, because almost all the main protagonists, if not all of them, are going to be there. I hope he wins by 10 lengths and we've got another superstar in the making. He really does look a cracking prospect.
Yeah, the Irish Arkle was last year's best novice chase, I would say, of the season, and could easily be the same again, particularly over the minimum trip, that is. Fact of file, Matt, stick with you on this one. So responded well from his disappointing run, second to American Mike, who we talked about already, with a 17-length victory over Zana here, horse I backed. Win and place, so I was like delighted, but I was like, how wrong was I? That he's never near the favourite.
No, he's he's only 6 at the time. He'd had 20 hurdle races, 13 Grade 1s, so probably coming a bit late in his career. It's chasing, didn't look to take to it. Wouldn't surprise me if he reverts to hurdles. Got nearly 50 grand for finishing 3rd in the champion hurdle last year, and that's realistic again. For me, this was probably the race over the Christmas period where the hype has most exceeded the substance, because this fell apart. Zanahiyr didn't take to it. Spirit of Legend didn't jump well. Manella Kakuna was a promising second to Classic Getaway on his only start last season, but went out like a light here. He's had plenty of problems. Hard to know how much ability he retains. So he's probably best judged after another run. So Factorvile had a near solo. He ran a promising race behind American Mike, but American Mike was lapped by Gaelic Warrior at Limerick. Factorvile shifts a little to his right at his obstacles, but the obvious concern is he keeps putting in an extra stride, fiddling his fences, not landing with much momentum. He's a safe jumper, but a bit slow, and that cost him against American Mike. If anything, I think he was more hesitant here, so you wouldn't be saying his jumping had improved. The one positive is he did come up at the last, the usual 2 out. Plenty of Willies have been improving more than usual for the run. Having bypassed hurdles, Factorvile's entitled to improve more during the season than most of his novice chasing rivals. But he earned a racing place rating of 130 on his seasonal debut last season, then got 133 at DRF, 136 at Cheltenham. So doesn't have the profile of a horse that improves hugely for the run. And Willie was very bullish afterwards, saying he can go to the top. Some have picked up on that being un-Mullins-like, so an indication that Factorfile's a star. I think it's more that he's the first high-profile bumper horse Willie's sent straight over fences since missed that. Willie feels under pressure for him to deliver. I suspect Factorfile was fitter than plenty of Willie's novice chasers that ran over Christmas. Now, none of that's to say he can't be a top-notcher. If you're listening to this with your racing fans hat on, he's an interesting prospect to follow because he looks to have a real engine. My point is that the Mullins hype has led him to being miles shorter in the Ante-Post markets than his form warrants. You'd think with that jumping style, he'd need to go up in trip. 7.0 for such a strong broadway, it's far too short. With your betting hat on, he's one to oppose.
Okay, yeah, Don, would you concur with any of that? With the hype, it's tough, isn't it? The hype, and you Mullins, you have to respect his opinion, don't you?
Yeah.
I can see you grasping with the same struggle that man.
Yeah, look, he's not my type of price anyway. But geez, I was impressed by him. I was more impressed than that. I thought his jumping was very good. The time of the race was good, and I know you can pick holes in the form of it, but the normal third last, which was the second last, he was so good at that, and he got to the second last, which was the last fence, and Mark Walsh just kind of allowed him do what he wanted to do, and he went long. To me, it was a horse, and then he, like on the run in from the second last fence, bypassing the last, he just came away and did it very easily. He's just turned 7, but like Willie Mullins, instead, I think they allowed him running bumpers last season instead of going over hurdles, because I think this season was always the season they were going to go chasing with him regardless because of his age. So they allowed him run in bumpers for the whole season instead of going over hurdles at some point and then going chasing. And yeah, as Matt was saying, he's done it before, missed that, and obviously with Florida Pearl. But no, I like, and when he got beaten by American Mike, that was in mid-November at Navan. Like, that's the point in the year when the Willie Mullins horses, they're really only starting to get going. Like come Hatton's Grace Hurdle weekend, which is early December, they're probably in the middle part of getting going, and it's only really at Christmas that they hit full stride. So it was legitimate to expect that he would improve quite significantly from his Navan run, and American Mike was underperformed the other day. But I don't think he could have done a huge amount more than he did, and yeah, I think stepping out in trip will help him again, like from 2 miles 5.5 furlongs. So yeah, I mean, like I don't think I'll ever be backing him because, as Matt was saying, he's a fashionable horse now, and he's high profile, and it's hard to find an edge with that type of horse. But I thought it was hard not to be impressed by him.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, just one point, picking up on a good point Don made there about he was always going chasing this year, and because he was 6 in the champion bumper. And I think Willie's learnt a bit from what's happened with the likes of Appreciate It, Sir Gerhard. If you've got these chasing types and they're 6 in the champion bumper, if you run them over hurdles when they're 7, then by the time they're novice chasers, if all goes well, they're 8. Appreciate It had a setback, didn't he? Ended up running a champion hurdle, so he's 9. By the time you get them into open company, they're 10. So I think it's really good for the game that he's prepared to put these horses straight over fences. So with my racing fans hat on, I really hope Factorfile does go to the top, because he's more likely to do this sort of thing again.
Okay, yeah, fascinated to see what happens to him over the next couple of months. And look, hopefully a lot of the horses we're talking about we'll see at the DRF. Ballyburn, Don, hard not to be impressed. Hard not to be impressed with this. Well, yeah, I'd say there'll be agreement on this.
Yeah, like this was just a blow you away performance. And similar, like he got beaten by Firefox at Ferry House at Hatton's Grace Hurdle meeting and stepped forward from that. But like he was such a talking horse last season. He won the bumper at Pointstown, not the champion bumper. And I think they ran Tully Hill against the Dream to Share instead of running Ballyburn. And maybe, yeah, I think Patrick said something about recently that maybe, you know, if they'd done it the other way around, they might have different results. But he was keen as well last year. He's settling better in his races, and yeah, look, you know, he's just a hugely exciting horse who did all you could have expected him to do.
Yeah, Matt, it's hard again. Like same thing as I said to Don, but it was just a blow your away performance at Leopardstown.
Yeah, he was excellent, wasn't he? He did fulfil the hype, in my view. Here, it was interesting. Willie said that after the Fairy House race, where he was beaten by Firefox, turned into a sprint which didn't suit him. That sort of says to me the Ballymore, where they tend to go steadily and you need a real turn of foot, may not be his race. Maybe he's more of a fast galloper, and the Supreme would be the right sort of race for him. Yeah, it's a bit early to be playing Mullins bingo in the novice hurdle divisions at the moment, but he couldn't have done any better here. And I would say that maiden where Firefox beat Ballyburn is possibly the strongest novice hurdle run so far this season.
Yeah, and it's really annoying. In some ways, we didn't get a chance to watch Firefox, but he will run on Friday as favourite. We'll probably go off favourite given he was close. He was favourite before the racing got cancelled, so we will discuss that further with a view maybe him versus Ballyburn to see who could potentially be the right favourite for perhaps the Ballymore. But one horse you want to talk about, Jade de Grugy, Matt. So take it away here. How impressed you were?
I think it was Don who wanted to come particularly in on him.
Don, you far away, Don.
Up in a minute.
Yeah, nothing spectacular. Just no. I thought she was really good. She beat a good horse with Tom Coopers and Butcher Hollywood. Won a bumper at Galway earlier in the summer, but it was a first run for Willie Mullins. She was faster than Music Guitar wasn't winning the handicap hurdle for the same course and distance half an hour later. And yeah, just like look, she's high in the betting for the Mares Novices hurdle. So. But she's a definite candidate for it, and yeah, it was again first run for Willie Mullins. She won her bumper in France and coming on here after a break of over a year, and you would have expected her to improve for the experience and improve for in terms of fitness. But yeah, I just thought she did it really well.
Okay, one to keep an eye on. Those maiden hurdles at Leopardstown tend to produce a lot of winners later in the season. We're going to go to our eye catcher section here. Matt, take it away with your three here. Look, this is always tough to whittle it down at the best of times, let alone over a busy Christmas period. So make the case for these three, and if you want to throw an honourable mention or two in, by all means do.
Yeah, 3 rather than 33, which is tempting to do. First one's Nick Rocket. Look, the classic embryonic chaser brought on slowly last season when he mixed bumpers and novice hurdles. Raw and improved significantly with every run. Racing Post rating 111, 123, 132, 148. Last being a grade 2 at Fairyhouse. Ran a Sam race on debut, Corbett's Cross, 3-card Bragg, Monty Star, just 5 lengths. He was beaten there. Same course and distance on New Year's Day, faced much lesser opposition, one with a minimum of fuss. Jumped soundly, but very much to me in the style of a stayer, economically not exuberant. We were discussing earlier on about the different jumping styles for different distances. He got better as the race went on. That was on heavy ground. Whilst it was probably more about progression through last season than underfoot conditions, his best form was on yielding. This was only a 6th start under rules. He looks open to more improvement than plenty of the novice chasers who are more experienced as racehorses. As is often the case, Willie looks to have lots of speedy novice chasers, fewer Broadway types. I think Embassy Gardens might well go for the National Hunt chase. So Grange Clare West, maybe Factor File in the line for the Broadway. Definitely think Nick Rocket could well end up there. 21.0 is quite appealing. He really looks on the upgrade. Second one, Storm Hartner, 3-year-old maiden at Punchestown on New Year's Eve. Pied Piper beat Vauban in this a couple of years ago. Vanera Charm won it en route to the Fred Winter, so it can be a decent race. What was interesting is he got blindsided a couple of hurdles. He had every excuse to back off his obstacles after that, but he didn't, and absolutely bolted clear in the straight. Now, it didn't look a strong renewal in truth, but he showed a real turn of foot at the business end. He was quickening. He's better judged after another run. He may have been beating nothing here, but definitely eye-catching. And finally, a pretty obvious one in Jericho de Repenay, won the introductory hurdle at Newbury. Like his hurdling debut, they went steadily, but he faced much stronger opposition. The unbeaten Secret Squirrel, 94 rated at Flat Horse Paradise. Jericho de Repenay jumps, well, going steady gallop at least. Showed a good turn of foot, win this with a minimum of fuss. Visually, he was eye-catching, but I wanted to include him just with a few words of caution. Nicky says he needs more experience. If he doesn't get another run, he won't go to Cheltenham. Plenty of time to do that, providing the weather plays ball. And Nicky is quite choosy about which races he's prepared to run his horses in, so not as simple as it might be with other trainers. But the wider point is that when Nicky says something like that, it's often about raw chasing types that he then doesn't hard train for the festival as novice hurdlers with the future in mind. And he hasn't got much experience. Alfaroff 13 years ago, the last Supreme winner that hadn't won a Class 1 hurdle, and he'd run in a Grade 1. Jericho de Repenay needs a meaningful prep, ideally one where they go a gallop. James Bowen did say beforehand he thought he wanted further than 2 miles. If he does lack experience, the typically steadier tempo of the Ballymore might suit him better. So whilst he was really eye-catching, it's a case of holding fire. It'd be crazy if you're backing him at Ante-Post at about 6.5 for the Supreme at the moment.
Okay, 3 eye catchers for Matt: Nick Rocket, Stormheart, and Jericho de Repenay. But we'll put in that eye catcher section more with a view of talking about the horse specifically. Don, 3 eye catchers here. I do think that you're lying quite regularly about if you've 33 eye catchers, you've none. So we've 3 here. We've whittled it down.
Yeah, I have none then if that's the case, because I'm more in the 33 camp as well. And in fact, both the first and second from the future champions novices hurdle at Leopardstown, they're both in my list. Caldwell Potter and Predator's Gold, but I think Predator's Gold might be the one who's more under the radar simply because he didn't win. Look, I know Down Memory Lane underperformed on the ground, Daddy Longlegs underperformed on the ground, but Caldwell Potter and Predator's Gold, they had it between them from a long way out. And Predator's Gold, he did look a big challenger to Caldwell Potter on the run to the last. He made a pretty bad mistake at the final flight. Caldwell Potter didn't jump it great either, but Predator's Gold probably made a worse mistake. But then Caldwell Potter was going away on the run in. So I just think that mistake, maybe it was the mistake of a tired horse, and it was a fairly grueling encounter over 2 miles. But I think he'd be better over further, actually, or back up to further. He won the Land Rover bumper, the Defender bumper at Punchestown back in April. And then he was really good in winning his maiden hurdle back at Punchestown when he beat Mossy Fen Park, who went on and won his maiden hurdle at Down Royal next time. That was over 2 miles, 3.5 furlongs. He was back over 2 miles, which you'd think that on breeding as well, I think the Sam won over 2 miles and 3. He'll be better going back out and trip. So I think that he met a very smart horse in Caldwell Potter, a progressive horse who has more experience, and I think Caldwell Potter will come forward again. But Predator's Gold, he just might be a little bit underrated going forward, especially stepping back up and trip. And it's a similar case with
But just before we move on from Caldwell Potter, I thought there'd be a little bit more hype about this horse after an impressive win, obviously related to Mighty Potter, but I think maybe the trainer's comments that it won't be as good as Mighty Potter, little things like that. It's just surprised me, but I thought the performance was quite decent. You spoke about him there, but.
Yeah, fully agree with that. And like, he was an underrated horse in the race. You know, Down Memory Lane and Daddy Longlegs, Down Memory Lane, obviously stable companion of the winner, and Daddy Longlegs, a stable companion of the runner-up. They were the fashionable horses. They were the ones who'd won their maiden hurdles with, I guess, the visual impression that they created was really strong, and they were the ones that the public hyped or cottoned onto. And then I think the market kind of corrected itself a wee bit closer to the off, but you know, Predator's Gold and Caldwell Potter, they've both done, you could have argued, at least as much as Daddy Longlegs and Down Memory Lane had done. Well, you know, the visual impression that both those created in their maiden hurdle wins was really strong. You know, this is easy in hindsight, but Caldwell Potter and Predator's Gold, they were equal. And Caldwell Potter, he'd had a good run in the maiden hurdle behind It's For Me, who again could be a really smart horse, and then he went on and won his maiden hurdle at Navan, so he got beaten in his first maiden hurdle, and then so he had that a little bit extra experience as well, which probably told in the ground. Like, the ground got really soft on the second day at the Leopardstown Christmas Festival, and you needed that kind of gritty determination, a lot of which is helped by experience. So maybe it just played into Caldwell Potter's hands, but I agree with you, Daniel. I think there's more to come from him as well. The 3 Mile Beginners Chase at Punchestown on New Year's Eve, to me that was a really intriguing race, because like Monty Starr, we've spoken about him before. I think he was an eye catcher for one of us in the past. And 3 Card Bragg, they were meeting again, having met in the Beginners Chase, the really good Beginners Chase in which Nick Rocket ran, as Matt mentioned earlier on. But you have to like Monty Starr. I think he's a progressive horse. His jumping was really, really good. Like Rachel Blackmore, every time he jumped a fence in behind 3 Card Bragg, she was able to just allow him fill up, because he was making his ground at his fences, whereas 3 Card Bragg wasn't jumping as well. So Jack Kennedy maybe had to use him up a wee bit more in order to retain his position in front, which is obviously, when you set off in front, that's probably what you want to do. So I think 3 Card Bragg will probably do better with a lead when he can settle in behind horses instead of having to lead. His jumping might be better in behind as well. And it was 3 miles. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 Card Bragg stepped out and trip and targeted the National Hunt Chase over 3 miles 6. It's a race that Gordon Elliott loves to have runners for, whereas Monty Starr, he might be more a kind of a Brown advisory horse than a National Hunt Chase horse. So look, they're both horses to keep in mind, but I think 3 Card Bragg in a National Hunt Chase, I think that, like, I know he's a maiden over fences still, but that might be a target for him. Like, he was a really good novice hurdler last season. He was only beaten the net by In the Pocket in the Grade 2 Navan novice hurdle last season at Nace over 2.5 miles, and he shaped that day as if he would be better over further. So I think, again, going out and trip will help him. And the third novice is Waterford Whispers. It was in a novice's handicap hurdle, which the time was really poor, but that's because the pace was a sedate pace, and Michael O'Sullivan set it on Champagne Admiral, Pat Fahey's horse. He rode a really smart race from the front, and then he quickened it. In Champagne Admiral, he had good form. He finished second behind on Tubber in a maiden hurdle, and then won his maiden hurdle at Limerick next time. So he's a progressive horse going into the race. Waterford Whispers, Mark Walsh never had him too far off the pace. He just couldn't get to Champagne Admiral, but I think he's a horse who will be better with a stronger test of stamina. He beat the aforementioned Answer to Cafe at Fairyhouse last time, and on breeding, he's from the family of Topsham Bay, a Whitbread Gold Cup winner. So he's a progressive horse anyway, but I think he could do even better with a greater test of stamina, either a stronger pace over 2.5 miles, or maybe even going out a wee bit and trip.
Okay, those 3 eye catchers for Don. Predators Gold, shout out to Caldwell Potter in that segment as well. 3-card Bragg and Waterford Whispers. We'll go to our final section, which is when to pull the trigger. And Matt, I'll let you sort of explain for those new listeners that are coming in post-Christmas what this sort of section is all about, and maybe take it away with a very interesting shout that you thought perhaps price-wise might ruin for you, but thankfully didn't for either of you, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, so in the autumn when we were doing this, we were talking more about what extra information we needed to pull the trigger on an Ante-Post bet. Now we've had the Christmas festivals. Most weeks we're going to be focusing on what has made us actually pull the trigger on an Ante-Post bet. So a rank outsider here in the Gold Cup at 70.0, the real whacker. Now, when a few weeks ago I was talking about what was needed, I wasn't anticipating a mammoth performance from Galopin de Champs in the Savills. It's obviously changed the market. If he turns up in the same form at Cheltenham, then yeah, he's long odds on to win. The others have never shown that level of ability. But the more I think about it, the more I worry about how much that may have taken out of him. He didn't back up his brilliant Gold Cup run at Punchestown, and Willie wants to run him in the Irish Gold Cup as well. So I am prepared to take him on. At first sight, the Broadway form, which had plenty of boosts in the autumn, Jerry Calan by Maximus Thunder Rock, took a battering over Christmas. But I think there are plenty of valid excuses. Jerry Calan got wound up in the preliminaries. Don't think he ran his race at Leopardstown. Maximus picked up an injury. Thunder Rock got taken off his feet over the wrong trip. So that Broadway form might now get a bit underrated. And the real whacker ran in the King George. According to his trainer, Patrick Neville, he missed the start, didn't get to his usual front-running role. It was his first try chasing right-handed, made mistakes at the 2nd and the 5th, and never got into a rhythm. And it may have been that classic high-class horse not taking to the idiosyncratic test that's the King George. Normally when that happens, they end up out with a washing. Imperial Commander was beaten 63 lengths. Looks like trouble was pulled up, and they both went on to win the Gold Cup a few weeks later. By contrast, the real whacker was doing his best work at the end. He's only beaten 10 1/4 lengths. That looked to confirm the impression that he was idling in both the Dipper and the Broadway last season, and as his hurdling form suggests, he's a stayer. He's likely to go straight to the Gold Cup. Jerry Calan's come out and won an Open Grade 1 this season, but even so, the fact that one's 11.0 and the other 70.0 is a rick, and it won't last. Over the next few weeks, as punters start reanalyzing last season's festival form, the real whacker's price is going to shorten a fair bit. So to put that in context, this century in the Gold Cup, the previous season's Broadway winner has lined up 11 times. Some, like Denman, shown excellent form during the season, gone off short prices. But of those 11, they were 9 from 25 over fences between them. Only 3 of them have won an Open Grade 1. So they haven't been carrying all before them. And the biggest price any of them went off was 21.0 in the Gold Cup. And that was Lord Windermere from the similarly unfashionable Jim Cullity stable, who'd been 22 lengths 8th in the Hennessy, 7th in the Savills, 27 lengths 6th in the Irish Gold Cup. So even worse form. Even if all the main players lay up, I can't see the real whacker going off much bigger than that sort of price, about 21.0. So at the very least, he's a great back to lay play on the Matchbook Exchange at around 70.0 now. If he's not running again in the interim, then the chances of him not lining up are pretty low. Back at Cheltenham over a staying trip, I'd expect him to be a different proposition in any case. So he's no forlorn hope, and he's well worth backing at around 70.0.
Okay, fascinating angle there for the Gold Cup. And Don, and I will do it back the long way out. Start of December, I started backing him for the Welsh Grand National, and someone came up to me as I'm watching the race at Leopardstown going, how's he going? I go, well, he's definitely going to place here, but he has absolutely no chance of winning this because that other horse, whatever he's doing out in front, he ain't coming back. And not only was right, I mean, 34 lengths he won the Welsh National by. I don't think I've seen a horse in any Grand National, maybe my memory's not correct here, win not just by that length, but that emphatically that you knew so early on that this was a really, really strong horse. So it's like, where does he go to next?
Yeah, Gold Cup maybe. Nasalam. I was with you, and I will do it.
Oh, there you go.
Right behind you. And for me, Nasalam. We might have spoken about Nasalam before. Maybe not on the Cheltenham Trail podcast, but on others. I always had him down as a, you know, when he stepped up and tripped from 2 miles to 2.5 miles and got soft ground and went left-handed. That's what he wanted. Then he won the Welsh National Trial over 3 miles, and to my eye, he just about got it. Like 3 miles was just about as far as he wanted to go. 3 miles 6 or 3 miles 6.5 on heavy ground at Chepstow, back at Chepstow, for all that he was a well-handicapped horse. I think he was £4 well in under a £4 penalty. I doubted whether he'd get it, and the more and more as he, just like you, Dan, as the race was going on, I was going, when's the stamina going to run out? And the answer was, it's not. But look, I know he was only rated 145. Even a £16 hike for that brings him up to a mark of 161. It still leaves him with, I think he's still £12 short of Shishkin. He's whatever, £19 short of Galopin Des Champs, but he's only £8 or £9 short of the rest. And he's had plenty of racing, but he's still unexposed for me over staying trips. Now that we know he stays 3 miles 6.5, 3 miles 2.5 at Cheltenham. Obviously, we know it's a staying contest. It's a stayers contest as well as a class contest. But we know he stayed the trip. Left-handed at an undulating track, Chepstow and Cheltenham, they're not wholly dissimilar. Blinkers on as well. He's 3 for 3 on blinkers. He's won blinkers for his last 2 runs, his Welsh National run and his National Trial run. He wore them once before when he won. And he's 6. He's just gone 7. Like, to me, look, he has to improve, and he has to improve quite a lot. But these staying chasers, 6 going 7, when they start improving, you don't know where they're going to stop. And, you know, we've had Gold Cup, like Galopin Des Champs was 7, he won it last year. Albin Photo was 7. War with Trish and Kick and King, they were all 7. Size and John was 7 when he won the Gold Cup. So it's a good age. Best Made, I think, was 7 when he won his first one. So while he has to improve, it's not beyond the bounds that he could make enough improvement even from now to get up onto the coattails of the top horses. And I know he does want soft ground, but as Matt mentioned earlier on, it's not a given anymore that it's definitely going to be goodish ground for Cheltenham for a Gold Cup. You know, the last 2 seasons have been soft ground. So I just thought at 42 or thereabouts, yeah, I thought he was an interesting play. And in terms of pulling a trigger, when you know price-wise are going to cover a race, that can be a trigger for pulling it, an incentive for pulling the trigger as well.
Yeah, I won't spoil it too much. But Gentleman's the game is the horse he tipped up. It's been a day now, so hopefully most people know that by now. Again, for those that don't have Racing Post subscriptions, you just look at odds checker around 605 when it comes out and see the little blue and goes, okay, he's tipping Gentleman's game. So a couple of interesting selections there. Look, they're win place sort of options on the day, but right now maybe a back to lay option, definitely bigger price perhaps than it will be on the day, but a couple of fun ones to pick out in the Gold Cup. But we will be covering all the Open Company races over Christmas next week, and then from there on we'll be starting our race by race previews just based on what the guys are tipping, but we'll also be bringing in guests mainly from our horse racing podcast as we build up to the Cheltenham Festival. It's going to be the biggest one we've had on Matchbook Betting Exchange for sure. We're really looking forward to it, and it just, given how short a month February always is, it gets there a lot quicker. Definitely post the Dublin Racing Festival. But my thanks to Donn McClean and Matt Toombs. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Other than that, keep an eye out on our social channels for the Horse Racing Podcast with Tom Stanley and co previewing the weekend's action. Until then, we will chat to you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.